Welcome into another episode of the Autzen Audibles podcast. Here for a Monday and a mailbag with a different guest. You're not used to seeing this guy's face on this show. You're used to seeing him on a lot of shows, Zach. And we've condensed your title here. You sent it to me. Zach Neel, Oregon Ducks beat reporter for USA Today and host of the Believe in Oregon podcast.
That's me. Thanks, Erik, for having me. I appreciate it coming on. Always fun to talk with you. Matt, no longer Jared, but we had some good times. So yeah, no, good to be on.
Yeah, and just one thing for listeners, because I keep getting this question. Matt is on medical leave with the family emergency. You will not see his work for a little bit, nor will you see him on this podcast. We addressed it a couple times. I just wanted to hit that again because I continue to see that in the questions. Like, where's Matt? He's doing okay. They're dealing with something in the family that's difficult. So just keep him in your thoughts. I've texted with him a little bit. And he seems like everything's in good spirits, but just wanted to kind of provide that update for people who maybe have missed it. So we've got a mailbag here, Zach. I got 4 questions. You're privy to them. I've sent them to you earlier, so we'll both have some insights here. But I wanted to start with, let's pick each other's brains. It's now been, 48 hours since I would think the right term for me is deflating, because you built up all these things and expectations after Penn State, and then it just felt like they got squashed on Saturday. I talked to you a little bit in the press box briefly, a little bit in the interview room briefly. We've had some time to digest. What stands out to you? Where's your head at coming out of this one?
Yeah, I think deflating, very good word. That's, that describes how I think a lot of the Oregon fan base is feeling. Just frustrating. I think that we and a lot of the fans thought that this team was, and probably still is, like, a lot better than what they showed on Saturday. Like, yet again, it is a big game for Oregon, for Dan Lanning, where they just didn't quite answer the bell, and they happened to play one of their worst games of the season in that big game on that big stage. And, first of all, of course, credit to Indiana. They played fantastic. They were the better team, the more physical team, better coached team. I'm sure that's a lot of the reason why Oregon played a bad game. But, watching this, I've done 2 rewatches since, and just going back and, excuse me, seeing some of the plays that Dante Moore did not make, seeing some of the missed blocks, seeing some of the, the holding calls and the open receivers that were left there. It's just like, man, like all year we've kind of just seen this team make these plays, and then when they were there to be made, they didn't happen for whatever reason. So I think, deflating, frustrating, just kind of confused by what we saw the first 5 games compared to what we saw in this game. It just didn't match up.
Yeah, I think I made this comparison on social media on Sunday as I was going through the PFF grades for Dante. I wanted to hit that on this podcast because I haven't had a chance to really do that. We in the direct aftermath, John Evans, the student writer, is doing excellent work for us.
Very good stuff from John.
He's awesome. Just talked about kind of some of the thoughts on the offense, and one of my takeaways initially was kind of just that it seemed like this was more nuanced than just bad scheme, bad blocking. It seemed like there was some Dante involvement, and having watched it again and read some other coverage of people who watched it again, including John, who put together a really nice breakdown up over on DuckTerritory, kind of going through it all. Credit to Indiana, great game plan. They threw a ton of different looks at him, and whatever the opposite of credit is to Dante and the offense of staff for not
shame.
Shame for them for not having the counters, because that's really what it felt like to me. It felt like these plays were basically doomed from before the snap was even made a lot of the time, and I think that's really frustrating, especially because this is an offense that we know has the that has the athletic and personnel advantages with the ball. If they are able to, and we saw it happen with the Malik Benson touchdown pass. Malik just runs right down the field. Great scheme on that play from Stein. One of the few times it seems like they kind of got Indiana off kind of their base coverage and everything. That was basically the only time all game I felt like we could say that was their only touchdown, which is crazy to say come out of the game like that on offense. So this is going to be a huge week for Dante. We will talk about it, I'm sure, more on our podcast. I'm sure Zach will be talking about it on his multiple podcasts that he does.
Too many.
Of just like, this is a big week for Dante. This is a big week for Will Stein to kind of get some redemption, because I think the more you watched it, it didn't feel like, I think it was really easy to point your finger in one place. And Dan, as a great head coach, chose to point that finger right back at himself, that thumb right back at himself, back at his staff. I think is a little more nuanced than that, having watched it again. And there's some ownership that Dante took post game that shouldn't go ignored, because I do think he contributed, unfortunately, to quite a bit of this. And there's a reason why the PFF grades suggest this is the worst quarterback performance since Anthony Brown in 2021. And my last thought, drawing that parallel, it reminded me a lot of watching, I hate to bring up this game, the 2021 Stanford game, where you watch it and went like,
you had to say it.
There were so many moments where it's just like they should win this game, because there's so many moments that just weren't made, so many plays that just weren't completed in the way they needed to be. So yeah, I think we agree a lot on that.
I think what was very frustrating too is, I mean, you said earlier, this is the team that has the talent and the players that should be able to win this game. And usually we think that they have the coaching and the scheme to be able to win that game too, but they didn't really make any of the adjustments. You know, I tweeted early in the game, this is going to be a game that's won by the adjustments, whether it's, you know, in a quarter break or at halftime. Like, who has the pin last, as Dan loves to say, like, that's going to be something we see. We saw that the one touchdown in the game, they went deep and they found a little bit of a bust in the coverage, and they took advantage of, I think, some at times mediocre secondary play for Indiana. We knew going in that they did not have the best secondary. They've got D'Angelo Pons, who's a very good player, but they're not all Americans across the board. How many times after that deep ball did we see them throw it more than 25 yards down the field, even just try and take a shot or run those routes? Zero times.
For sure it's zero, yeah. 0
times. In the first half, what's the one thing on offense they did relatively well? That was run the ball between the tackles. I just did this doing some research before we came on. They had 21 rushes for 80 yards in the first half. They had 9 rushes for 1 yard in the second half. Like, they just went away from the rush, the run. I don't know why. I plan on asking Dan that tonight. Like, what did they see at halftime that kind of dictated that? I know score dictates that a little bit. You're playing from behind somewhat late in the game, but that doesn't stop you from, you know, running the ball between the tacks a little bit when you've had success. So yeah, a lot of questions. I think we all think this team is better than this. I'm sure they will learn from it, but that doesn't excuse the fact that they did not look good at all on Saturday.
I want to react to one last thing and we'll move on to the questions. We got 4 of them, some really cool things we're going to get into. I think the thing that was most confounding with the choice to move away from the run game was, you saw in the first half, Dante had a hard time with these simulated pressures, these different exotic blitzes. So why not make it easier on him and take away some of the burden by continuing to feed Jordan Davison, who had an incredibly productive second quarter. I think it was 6 carries, 55 yards in that quarter alone. I touched the ball 1 time in the second half. I'm confounded by that. I'm with you, Zach. I'm excited to hear you ask that question and Dan answer that question.
I don't know if I'm excited to hear his answer. I think we can kind of assume that he's probably not going to say much, but yes, I'll ask it anyway.
Sometimes he's good in these kind of inflection moments. I don't know.
Sometimes.
There's points. We'll see. Yeah. All right. We're going to do 2 questions here. We'll hit a break and then we'll finish with a couple more. This one I thought was just a really good kind of way to center the conversation, big picture. This is from @Taylor_Nick_L. Is Dan Lanning's ceiling at Oregon a national championship, or should Duck fans start making peace with it being something less than that?
Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
I think the answer is it's still national championship.
Yeah, come on.
Like, I don't think there's anything that changed. I mean, like, I guess here's one way to reframe this that I feel like I failed to do on Saturday's show. And I want to make this point across, because, you know, a lot of people make it, and I feel the same way. I predicted 1 loss in this going into the season. It was to Penn State. They won that game. They then lost the next game against another top 10 team. There's no reason this team can't run the table from here and even play for a national championship. Like, I don't think that's off the table at all. I think we can recalibrate expectations a little bit. But yeah, this year, it's as simple as this year, it's still national championship. And big picture, with the way recruiting is going, like, you have to think about it. Like, most of these players in this year's team should be or could be back next year. And the recruiting classes are not getting any worse. It's still a national championship. I don't think there's much debate.
They lost 1 game to what is now the number 3 team in the country at home. And like, we live in, like, this is a much bigger conversation that we don't need to have right now, but we live in this like microwave society where like it's just instant reactions, and what happened yesterday is all that matters. And it's like, take a step back for a second. Like, even last year ended in about as poor of a way as you could ever imagine with the Rose Bowl loss. And I think a majority of Duck fans would look back and say, you know what, it was still a pretty successful year. And even when like you would never think that if on January 2nd or even January 10th. But yeah, I mean, just take a breath. Like, after this loss, it's not the end of the world. Like, I wrote about it on Sunday, and Dan said it after the game, that every goal that they had coming into this year is still very attainable for them. Look at Ohio State last year, 2 losses. in the regular season, they went on to run the table. So absolutely still possible. I don't think that this team is any worse today than they were a week ago, and we thought that they were pretty dang good a week ago. So, yeah, the result was not there, but that does not mean that this season or this championship expectation is really any worse for the wear.
On October 12th, 2024, Ohio State lost to Oregon. Their fans wanted to fire Ryan Day. He wasn't the guy. On November 30th, they lost to Michigan. Their fans wanted to fire him. He wasn't the guy. January 20th, they won a national championship. Like, it's like, again, I'm not guaranteeing by any means, because I did think going into this season, there was a lot of youth. And like, frankly, what we saw on Saturday was a lot more like some of the concerns I had for the season. I think it was just jarring because it looked so much better. Again, against 4 teams they should have beat the way they did, and then against Penn State, a team that I was skeptical they beat. So it felt like, and you actually asked Dan this question, and Dan didn't have any interest in answering it, but like, it felt like they were ahead of schedule. Like, I felt like that was my assessment of things, and now I think we just have to say maybe they aren't. Maybe this is where we should have expected a younger team to be.
I feel like this is a different topic. I feel like we should start a podcast that just goes over all of the questions that are asked to Dan and that we ask, and if he gave us good answers or what we thought he was going to. Because when I asked that, I was like, he is going to give you an absolutely nothing answer here. But you know what? Still ask that question.
We could do, every Monday at 8 p.m. we do a instant reactions to the press conference that we just were part of, and go over every question. Really dissect some James Crepea questions. That would be that would make the segment much more. We can't just be our questions. We have to include James's questions, because that would make it far more popular.
It's going to be a 2 hour long podcast if we do that.
Reading just the questions for James adds an extra 40 minutes.
Yep, agreed.
Anything else you wanted to hit here, Zach? I don't think there's much more to say. I'm still resolute in my belief that Dan Lanning will win a national championship at Oregon, assuming he's here long enough to do so.
Long term, yes, I absolutely believe that. This year, going into the Penn State game, I was always saying earlier this year, I was saying that this is not the championship season. This is the setup season to the championship. That's what my mind was. Like in TV series, like, you've got the setup episodes for the finale. After the Penn State game, I said, that's out the window. This is a championship season now. I think they can do it this year. I'm a little bit cooler on that thought now after this game, just because it did show some of the bumps and bruises and stuff they have to overcome. But college football's wide open this year. I still believe that it is anyone's game. And if they, get some things going and get hot at the right time, they definitely can do that.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, though. This is a wide open race. Like nobody looks unbeatable.
Who's the favorite? Miami? Mario Cristobal?
And I was going to say, the team Oregon just lost to, Oregon was very much in that game while playing very, very poorly. And that's a team that I think has been as impressive. I would stack their resume up there with anybody in the country right now, Indiana.
Absolutely.
I'm not convinced that Oregon couldn't beat that team on a neutral field with a couple more months of development and a better scheme and a better game plan, which gets us into this next question here from @_Fotef17. Do you think Dan Lanning and staff have a bye week problem? It seems like they've come out sluggish in games after bye weeks. #Autzen Audibles. I did some stat crunching here. I don't know if you did the same kind of thing.
I did not. I was just, when you were asking, I was like, I did mean to go back and look at their record out of bye weeks, but I did not. So I hope that you have that.
I got that. Plus I got the offensive and defensive, like totals and splits and
wonderful
stuff. Okay. Here's the record. Oregon is 3-2 after byes. They've lost twice to Washington in 2023, and then this last weekend against Indiana. They also have 3 wins over number 9 UCLA in 2022. That was the I guess 2 times ago when game day was here. Mm-hmm. They beat UCLA again in 2024, 34-13 down in Pasadena, and then they beat Washington last year, coming off that long slog of a run there where they barely got through Wisconsin, and they came out and just thumped Washington 49-21.
You could also consider the Rose Bowl, though.
Yeah, okay. If we want to, we can throw
in bowl games if you want, but yes.
If we threw that in, then we should probably throw in the
totally. It just that opens it up for sure. Because if you're talking about bye weeks, like that's the bye that every Oregon fan will think about instantly, because it was one of the worst buys ever.
Yes, and actually, that's the thing I really want to get to. But let me also hit you with the splits here. Will Stein in 4 games, he wasn't coaching the offense at 2020 in 2022. He was at UTSA. 34 points per game, 424.3 yards per game. Tosh Lupoy defenses, 26 points per game, 372.8 yards per game. None of those figures are like jump off the screen. Oh my gosh, there's a terrible correlation. They aren't up to what the standard has been, though, if you were to go look at what these offenses under Stein have averaged and what the defenses under Tosh have allowed per game. So there may be a little bit to it. I actually think, and this was the one I really wanted to dive into, but man, it was going to take so much work, and I kind of got lost a little bit in time. I wanted to see what the numbers look like when other teams had extra time. Because that to me feels maybe just as important.
Like even if Oregon had a bye, the fact that Indiana also had a bye. See
like,
what
what's it look like when teams come in with 2 weeks against Dan,
and
Will, and Tosh? Does that feel like a decidedly different conversation? Because based on the data here, I know there have been 3 losses. Because we'll throw in that. I think that's absolutely fair to throw in the game in Pasadena. I also think it's not enough correlation where I'm like they are just atrocious here coming out of the bye, and frankly, like there have been some really good moments coming out of the bye last year against Washington. They came out and played probably that was maybe up there with the most impressive like total performance both sides of the ball this season.
Well, I mean, the easy devil's advocate for your what does the other team look like coming out of a bye is Penn State this year, and I don't think they just fired their coach, so they didn't play very well. But that's a whole different conversation.
By the way, 3 out of the 5 teams Oregon's beat this year have already fired their coach, and it's mid-October. It's crazy.
I tweeted that yesterday, and I got so much hate from apparently I'm like some of Washington fans' like biggest target now. They will not stay out of my mentions, but whatever. That's kind of what you sign up for when you cover Oregon.
The last time I went to Husky Stadium, I had 4 guys. I don't know if I told you this. I had 4 guys outside Husky Stadium somehow recognized me and follow me all the way to the press box elevator, telling me basically you're a mother effer the whole time. And I was like, God, this is crazy behavior out here.
Love rivalries. Honestly, do love rivalries, but that's sometimes too far. Back to the buys. Yeah, I agree with you that there may be something there. I'm not ready to say it's a thing yet, but I'm cognizant of it. I honestly think it's more the fact that it happens that coming out of these buys, they've played some really good teams. Like you mentioned Washington in 2023. That was the game up in Seattle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the Seattle game. Indiana, really good. Ohio State, really good. They've just played some really good teams and sometimes gotten beat by better teams. I'd like to think that the bye week prepares you more for that. But again, sometimes I don't know, was Oregon's offense bad on Saturday or were they dealing with rust? I think it's a little bit of both, but I kind of think after watching the game that Dante just wasn't feeling it, not seeing the field, not seeing open receivers. So I don't know if they would have played better had they not had a bye week. I think the game is the game and you're kind of going to get what we saw either way.
Yeah, I do think there is something to the other team having an extended period of time and to be like as critical as I will be, because I think it's hard to be critical sometimes of like coaching dynamics without having been around them. It did feel like Indiana had a better game plan and utilized its time better than Oregon did, at least based upon what we saw and based upon what Dan has said. And it does make me wonder about something that was kind of subtle there during the bye week. And I know you asked about it. A couple other people did it. Dan talked about they used more of their time after the Penn State game to rest their team. It didn't sound like those were harsher practices. I remember asking Dan, and this isn't unusual. I don't want to make this bigger than it needs to be. I did ask him like early thoughts on Indiana, and like he immediately was like, well, we're not there. We're not there yet. And
that was interesting.
I'm going to guess Kurt Cignetti and Shanahan and that whole staff were there yet during that week before.
Well, I wonder how much of it, I mean, look at the games they played before the bye week. Indiana was in a wake-up call against Iowa, and they probably were feeling like they needed to get down to business and fix some stuff right away. Oregon had their biggest win of the season and was feeling on top of the world. Maybe that played a factor. I don't know. But yeah, it could be something. Could be part of it.
Oregon will have one more bye week later in the year, and right after that, they'll play Iowa on the road. Like that's going to be a good test to this theory. There will also be, I think, several more times this year where the opposing team has at least a week, or at least the advantage in games. Like this week included, it's only one day, but Rutgers did. Washington played on Friday. Obviously, Oregon and Indiana played on Saturday.
So if this theory holds true, then this is not going to be a championship season for Oregon.
No, it won't. Cool, because I tell you what, there's going to be a break between the regular season and whenever they play postseason football.
Gosh, but now they may not have the the Big Ten championship game to so they may stay out of that long bye. Which I saw some people joking on Twitter that that was Dan's plan this whole time: lose a game, get some motivation for your team, stay out of that Big Ten title game. Obviously, that's not the case, but
oh man, I guess if you operate in a world where there's definitely a lot of paths where Oregon doesn't make the Big Ten championship game now.
I think it'd be pretty hard. I mean, Indiana's probably not losing. Ohio State's probably not losing.
Right. It feels like we're set there. I was just trying to think of what other scenarios could cause that ripple effect, and it would take Indiana kind of fall. I think Indiana could lose to Penn State, but Penn State just lost Drew Aller, and their team's not that good this year. So
I don't think
we'll have to dive more into that as we get further down the road here. All right, we're gonna hit a quick break. We'll come back. We got two more to kind of dive into, I think, more like the future and what we're expecting to see here on the Autzen Audibles podcast. All right, we're back from the break here. Two more. We've got one from @CBusyTheGoat, who asks, does Oregon actually turn it around at Rutgers, or do we see the issues that got exposed on Saturday pop up? I've delved into Rutgers. Like, they're interesting on offense. They've got some like really interesting mismatch possibilities on the outside at receiver. Like Ian Strong, their star receiver, is very similar to Elijah Surratt in size. They've got another receiver who's 6'6", who's also really productive. I think it's KJ Duff. They've got a good running back, Antoine Raymond, who's like statistically one of the 3 or 4 best running backs in the Big Ten. PFF thinks he's awesome. He's like their 4th best running back. So this is an offense that could give them problems. I'm not convinced it's a defense that will. And I guess the only thing that concerns me is if, the things that we talked about earlier and kind of our debrief with the simulated pressures, the creative blitzes, that Shiano and those guys just dive all into that stuff and it causes issues. But I'm not necessarily there. I just realized I haven't been putting the questions up, Zach. I spent the time to put these in. So here's the question.
Oh, yeah, I forgot we talked about that. Great.
There it is for you.
Do you believe Oregon is a really good team, or do you think after this one loss, they're a very mediocre team? I still believe they're a very good team. I don't think that these things that got exposed on Saturday happen against average talent. I think a really good team, put the magnifying glass to them and showed them what they need to get better at. And, we believe that Oregon has a really good coaching staff and really talented players. Guess what those tend to do? Get better throughout the season. I mean, Dan has talked a million times before that you don't want to be playing your best football in October. You want to be continually getting better, progressing throughout the season, start hitting your peak in late November, early December. I think this team is going to continue to do that. I think this was, if you want to look on the bright side and see the glass half full, this is a really good wake-up call in early October, and one that does not hurt your resume too much, does not really hurt you in the long run too much. You still have everything in front of you. I think it showed them where they need to get better and where they need to improve, what things to work on. I will be very curious to see how they do that. I know that I've got some thoughts. I'm sure you have some thoughts as well. But this is a coaching staff that, in the best way I can put this, are psychos. And they are going to spend every second of their day trying to learn from this and make sure that it doesn't happen again. So I have not done as deep a dive on Rutgers yet. I know that they're a decent team, but they're not Indiana. They're not even Penn State. Well, they may be Penn State now, but they aren't Penn State when Oregon played them. I saw that the line opened at 14.5 points. It has since jumped up to 17.5 points. I don't think Oregon's going to have too much trouble with this game.
I'll say this: if you thought maybe you had a hard time going to bed on Saturday night, I don't think that the Oregon coaching staff even tried. I'm gonna guess they were just there in the office all night, diving through all this stuff, seeing the stuff that I'm sure that they picked up much more astutely than we did live, but then on rewatch and going, oh my gosh, we had left so much out there. And to me, I guess the only way to see Busy's question here that they don't turn it around is if it's like Dante's just isn't resolute, doesn't have the resiliency needed to bounce back, and he starts to revert to freshman UCLA quarterback Dante, which is frankly what it felt like, especially in that second half. And even in the second quarter, where he just kind of started to get happy feet, didn't look upfield, bailed really early out of the pocket, threw the ball. I don't think the interceptions are atrocious plays as much as like the first one's kind of bad luck. Second one, again, he's trying to make something happen. Yeah. Game's out of hand probably at that point, or at least it certainly was after. But I to me, it comes down to how does he respond? I'm really all in that this is a guy who can take Oregon really, really far and it can be one of those guys that frankly can win you football games against elite competition. That did not happen last game. I'm very confident he'll play much better this week, but the path to not seeing them correct issues to me is mostly an offensive one. And I really think it starts with the quarterback position.
Well,
not to put it all on him, but it does feel like if they're going to have a hangover game, it's because he is still kind of lost and stuck on Saturday.
I totally agree. And this is a good fork in the road moment for Oregon. I mean, because look at what Penn State did. They lost that big game to Oregon, and then, their season could have gone one of two ways. They could have bounced back from it and gotten better, or they could have, been a dumpster fire. And we saw which way that's gone so far. This is another situation where Oregon can bounce back and get better from this game, or they can really, like you said, continue down the same path, and Dante can continue to struggle. That's, I think, where you lean on your culture and your leadership and the foundation. And I think Oregon has one of the best cultures in the country right now with what Dan Lanning has built there. So, if you trust in Dan Lanning, you trust in his staff, then I think that you have to trust that they're going to turn this around. Like, they have not shown many reasons to believe that they cannot be a really good team. Dan has still yet to lose to an unranked team as a head coach. So, I don't think it's going to start now.
One other thing just to bring up is this is such a favorable schedule. They just played 2 top 10 teams back to back. Obviously, Penn State's not that anymore, but at the time, you then play 2 teams that are currently 0-6 in Big Ten play. Wisconsin, I think, is worse than Rutgers this year, which maybe surprises some people listening to this, but they've had a heck of a time. That quarterback is out. That's Billy Edwards Jr., who was pretty productive last year at Maryland. These are 2 games that hit you perfectly on the schedule. Get right weeks, go to a bye week. I guess if question 2 ends up being right, maybe it's not great to go to a bye week, but I think we all agree that, in theory, going to a bye week is a benefit most of the time. And then the schedule really picks up. I mean, the last 4 teams that they are playing are all 1-loss teams in Big Ten play. USC's 3-1, and then Washington, Iowa, Minnesota are all 2-1. So that's you go from 0-6 in Big Ten play to what's at 9-4. That's where things become challenging. I think that's where you really can start to kind of measure the growth that we've seen. I guess I would also say to the kind of the original conceit of the question, I think they're going to win this game, and they might win this game going away. I don't know if we'll know if they've quote unquote turned it around until we get after that bye week, until we get into November. We see how they face Iowa, Minnesota, USC, and Washington. I think all 4 of those games, especially Iowa, USC, and Washington, are games that I could see them struggling and even possibly losing. I'm not expecting they're going to be 8-4 this year, but we're going to, I think, learn a lot more coming out of the bye week. I guess it's just almost my bigger answer to this question.
Yeah, completely agree.
All right, we're going to go to the last one. I'm actually going to put it on the screen this time. This is from @BWE Klowski.
B. Waklowski.
B. Waklowski. I'm guessing this is a Brandon or a Ben or a Brian Waklowski, perhaps. He can let me know on social media, as a lot of people usually do. Every week, I see teams from all over the Power 4 and Group of 5 nail 50-plus yard field goals. Kicking has been an issue at Oregon for 20-plus years. How does this continue to be an issue year in and year out?
Good question.
It is a good question.
Next question.
And I did some data-ing here.
Love it.
68 kickers in the country have made a 50 or more yard kick. 13 have made 2, and 2 have made 3, including Iowa's Gianni Septic. It's a tough last name there. Septic.
That is tough. Yeah.
Paints a picture. But my point is, that's a lot of kickers who can hit a 50-yarder. Oregon doesn't have one of those guys. I think Sappington coming into this year, I actually just was asked about special teams in a Q&A with an Indiana beat writer, and I said, I don't think he's a weak link or a guy who loses you football games. If he's going to keep missing short field goals like this, he might be that guy. I've got it here. He was 10 for 10 coming in to last game on kicks of 39 yards or fewer. That was the first in his entire career he's missed. So as long as he's making those kicks, you feel okay. I just do think that the fact that you don't have a consistent option in those longer range kicks, incredible luxury it was for Indiana to have a 58-yard kick at the end of half to take the lead.
Well,
Oregon
it's just
doesn't
like
have that.
his career. I was watching the rewatch. I think they said his career long was 46 or 48 coming into the game. Then he hit a 40-yarder, and then as soon as he lined up for that 58-yarder and Sapadina missed that, I think all of us were like, of course he's going to make this. It's Oregon football, Oregon special teams. Why would he not make this and just show like Oregon has a lot of stuff that other teams don't have and other teams want. Oregon is, I don't think, ever really had a kicker, and man, do they want one. A kicker that's a weapon and can make those 50-plus yarders. Like, it almost feels like, like you're much more of the Marvel guy than I am. The Infinity Stone, like that's the final thing that they need to really win the championship. Someone who can hit a 50-yarder. I don't know if they'll ever get it.
But frankly, like it would be great. He needs to be able to hit these intermediate kicks, which again he's been really consistent.
35 yarders. No excuse.
He's been hitting them. He didn't hit that one, and it wasn't even close. That was to me, the two first half inflection points to me were the Jamari Johnson drop and then the Atticus missed field goal. There's a chance Oregon is leading by 10 points at half.
Mm-hmm.
If those drives go a little bit differently, or 7 points at half, I guess, if it's a touchdown to conclude the first Appington field goal and he makes the second one.
Well, and then there's that, I think it was on the same drive as the Jamari Johnson drop where Dante, I believe it was like 3rd and 6, and rolled out to his right. He had Gary Bryant wide open over the middle. I think John tweeted this. He had, was it Kenyon running deep, or like someone streaking across the middle of the field in the end zone. He had, I think Davison on the rail on the left side. Like there was 3 guys open there for either first down or touchdown, and he tucked it and ran and got sacked for a loss. And that, I think, was another inflection point. But yeah, there were a lot of what ifs in that first half.
There were. And I guess just to the place kicking thing, it's an unusual, like we talk about Oregon and their I guess the talent they have on their rosters. It's much easier, I would say, to put resources and to evaluate like who is a big, fast, athletic guy who can play cornerback than it is to find and to recruit and pour a lot of resources into, like, I don't know if like the Oregon has the same budget to go get the next Sebastian Janikowski as much as they do to go get the next, Jamar Chase and Decorian Moore. Maybe they need to change that and prioritize it. Again, I'm still in I think Sappington is at least okay as long as he makes these under 40-yard kicks. If he keeps missing kicks if this is something where he gets in his head, then I'm really starting to be concerned. But I would absolutely love to have a weapon that can hit a 50-yard kick. That would be a thing of beauty. I think Oregon has 12 50-plus yard kicks in its school history. And again, you look around the country, there are guys who are going to get to half that total this year.
See, I almost disagree with you on the recruiting front. It seems like it should be a little bit simpler to find
it seems that way.
Field goal. It's just data points. It's just, do you make it? Do you miss it from this far? You don't have to worry about speed and cuts and size and mental fortitude and all this.
That's true.
It almost feels like you should be able to just find a kicker who makes kicks, but for whatever reason, that's something that has kind of evaded them for a long time now.
It reminds me too, and this is a way back quote. This is John Calipari 2 schools ago at Memphis against Kansas, where they lost in the national championship. It was Derrick Rose's team, and they missed a bunch of free throws. And after the game, he was asked about, we don't recruit for free throw make. That's not a priority for our recruiting. Maybe Oregon needs to recalibrate its priorities for making field goals on the gridiron. Maybe that's something that needs to happen.
I think they've also recruited decently well. I mean, there was, they've got Gage Herrick this year. What was the kid's name? Why am I forgetting it? The former 6-star kicker when Camden was here.
6-star kicker.
Transferred.
I love
it.
What was his name? Oh crap. He was the number 1 kicker in the country.
Yeah, number 1 kicker in the nation.
Bouncing.
Yeah. And he didn't play and then transferred. It's they recruit, we thought, pretty well at this position, but for whatever reason, I don't know if there's just some bad juju and Autzen, what it is, but yeah, it just doesn't work.
That's all we've got in terms of questions. Is there anything else, my good friend Zach, you wanted to get off your chest here?
I don't think so. I've got about 8 podcasts later this week, so I may need to save it for that. No, this is good little ease into the week for me. I love it. I'm happy to be on with you. Always happy to talk Oregon football. We don't get our like 20-minute waiting periods anymore before interviews to just chop it up. So this is always fun.
Yeah, we'll talk like Ryder Cup, and I want to get your thoughts on the new Tim Robinson joint on
Always
HBO
good.
at some point.
Always
But
good.
this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much to Zach, Neel, for coming on this podcast. We will be back, I believe, Tuesday morning with a guest from Rutgers talking about all things Scarlet Knights with, I think it's Bobby Darin, which is a great name, and I believe he's got a real strong New York accent, so that's going to be a super fun show for everybody. So check that one out. That'll come out Tuesday. But for Zach and myself, thanks for listening to the Autzen Audibles podcast. Talk to you later, folks.